The rain came down in heavy sheets, blurring the yellow lights of the city. Caroline Dawson clutched her belly as another contraction ripped through her. Her phone slipped in her trembling hand. She had called Robert 5 times. No answer. She had texted him, "It's time. Please come. I need you." The little screen glowed back in silence. Her breath came ragged. She was 9 months pregnant, alone in the apartment she once believed was a home filled with love. Tonight it felt like a cage. Robert, her husband, had promised he would never leave her side when the moment came. But where was he now? The truth burned in her chest. He was hundreds of miles away, sipping champagne with Vanessa, the woman who had stolen both his loyalty and his conscience. Caroline slid on her coat, though her body ached. Her bag was already packed by the door. Baby clothes, a blanket, a small stuffed bear she had bought in a flea market when she still dreamed of a happy family. She grabbed it, leaned against the wall for support, and dialed for a taxi. The dispatcher's voice was calm, routine. "Pickup address?" Caroline's voice cracked as she gave it. For a moment she almost confessed, "I'm about to give birth alone. Please tell me I'll make it." But she swallowed the words. Too proud, too broken. Minutes later, headlights splashed across the street outside. The cab driver rushed to help her in, but she waved him off, forcing a smile. Inside the car, every bump in the road felt like knives twisting inside her. She whispered to the baby, "Hold on, just hold on a little longer." In the silence, Caroline imagined what Robert was doing. He was probably laughing at Vanessa's jokes, their glasses clinking over an ocean view. She could almost hear his voice, smooth and careless, telling Vanessa that Caroline was too fragile, too needy. The betrayal stung worse than the contractions. The hospital lights finally came into view. Relief washed over her, but the fear remained. She didn't have Robert to sign the admission papers, no one to hold her hand, no one to shout encouragement. Just Caroline and her child against the storm. At the front desk, the nurse's smile faded when she saw the sweat dripping down Caroline's face. "We need to get her inside now," she barked to the staff. Caroline felt herself being wheeled through long, sterile corridors, voices shouting medical terms she couldn't follow. Her mind blurred, and in that blur, she pictured Robert's face. Not as the man he was tonight, but as the man he had once been. The one who swore eternal love on their wedding day. The one who whispered dreams of a future filled with laughter. How quickly that dream had turned to ash. A sudden pain tore through her again. The nurse leaned close. "Breathe, sweetheart. You're not alone here." But Caroline knew, deep in her heart, she was. And at that exact moment, while Caroline was being rushed into the delivery room, Robert raised a toast with Vanessa at a luxury resort, completely unaware that his wife's life was hanging by a thread. The wheels of the gurney rattled against the polished hospital floor as Caroline Dawson was rushed through the corridor. Her breathing was shallow, uneven, every gasp of air feeling like a battle. The fluorescent lights above blurred into streaks as tears filled her eyes. She heard fragments of voices, blood pressure dropping, "Get Dr. Hayes, prep the delivery room." None of them sounded real. All she could think was, "I'm alone. I'm completely alone." The doors to the delivery room swung open with a metallic clang. The nurses moved with trained precision, lifting Caroline onto the operating table. The air smelled of antiseptic, cold and sharp. A doctor leaned over her. "Caroline, I'm Dr. Ethan Hayes. You're in good hands. I need you to stay with me." His voice was calm, steady, but urgent. Her eyes widened at the name. Ethan, she knew that name. Once, years ago, back in college, Ethan had been the boy who carried her books, the boy who used to sketch her while she studied in the library. Now here he was, older, stronger, with the firm authority of a man who had faced life and death moments too many times to count. And he was the only one standing between her and the abyss. A sharp contraction tore through her body. Caroline screamed, clutching at the thin sheet beneath her. The nurse placed an oxygen mask over her face, urging her to breathe. She obeyed, gasping, fighting the rising panic. Somewhere deep in her heart, she still hoped Robert would burst through the doors, racing to her side, but the doors slammed shut behind her, locking the world out. And Robert? He was nowhere to be found. Far away in a glowing ballroom filled with chandeliers and music, Robert lifted his champagne flute. Vanessa leaned close, her lips grazing his ear. "To us," she whispered, her perfume intoxicating. The crowd laughed, Glasses clinked. Robert smiled, basking in the attention. His phone buzzed once more in his pocket. He ignored it, shoving it deeper into his tuxedo jacket. He never saw the word flashing on the screen. Critical condition. Back in the delivery room, Dr. Hayes barked orders. She's bleeding more than normal. Get 2 units of O negative now. The nurses rushed. Caroline's vision dimmed at the edges. She tried to speak, but her lips trembled without sound. Fear strangled her. This wasn't supposed to happen. Childbirth was supposed to be hard but beautiful, filled with love and support. Instead, it felt like a battlefield, and she was losing. Stay with me, Caroline, Ethan urged, gripping her hand. His eyes locked on hers, fierce and unwavering. You are not leaving this child. Do you hear me? You fight. Her tears slid sideways across her face, wetting the pillow. She thought of the tiny onesie folded in her hospital bag. She thought of the baby's first cry she hadn't heard yet. She thought of raising this child with no father at her side. Strength, raw and primal, surged up from deep within her. The beeping of the monitor spiked. We've got deceleration, a nurse shouted. The room exploded into controlled chaos. Ethan's jaw tightened. We need to move to emergency measures now. Caroline's heart pounded against the edge of consciousness. She wanted to scream Robert's name, but what would be the point? He wasn't there. He had chosen another life, another woman, while she lay here dying to bring his child into the world. Her body shook violently. The nurse wiped sweat from her brow. You're strong, Caroline. Your baby is almost here. And then, in that moment of unbearable pain, Caroline's world narrowed to a single truth. She might not survive this night. And as the delivery room filled with frantic voices, champagne glasses clinked across town, Robert laughing with Vanessa, unaware that his wife was slipping closer to death with every heartbeat. The hospital was quiet except for the urgent rhythm of machines. Caroline drifted in and out of consciousness, her hand limp in Dr. Ethan Hayes' grasp. Blood pressure low, pulse erratic, every number flashing on the monitor told him the same thing. She was teetering on the edge. Ethan knew she needed more than medicine. She needed the one person who was supposed to stand by her tonight. At 3 a.m., Ethan pulled off his gloves, grabbed the hospital phone, and dialed Robert Dawson's number. His voice, usually calm in crisis, carried a rare edge of fury. When Robert answered, his tone was slurred with whine and annoyance. Do you have any idea what time it is? Yes, I do, Ethan shot back. It's the time your wife is fighting for her life after giving birth to your child. She lost a dangerous amount of blood. She almost died tonight. There was silence, broken only by distant music spilling from wherever Robert was. Then a careless laugh. She always exaggerates. Caroline's dramatic like that. I'm sure she'll be fine. Doctors love to scare people. Ethan's knuckles whitened around the receiver. Listen to me carefully, Robert. If you care at all about her or about the child, you will get here now. I don't care if you have to fly, crawl, or beg a ride. Your wife could have been dead by now. And you weren't even here to sign the consent form. You left her completely alone. For the first time, Robert's voice faltered. She's really that bad? She was minutes away from bleeding out, Ethan said, his voice cold steel. You should be on your knees thanking her for surviving. But Robert wasn't in a hospital. He was standing on a balcony overlooking the ocean. Vanessa draped herself over his shoulder, her manicured fingers tracing circles on his chest. She whispered just loud enough for Ethan to hear through the phone. Tell them you'll come later. The baby isn't even yours. Not really. Ethan froze at the voice. Vanessa? He had seen her once in tabloid photos, always glued to Robert's side. His jaw clenched. Is that your mistress, Robert? While your wife is fighting for her life, you're standing there with another woman? Robert cleared his throat, defensive. Look, this isn't the time to judge me. Caroline's strong. She'll make it. I'll visit her tomorrow. Tomorrow? Ethan hissed. She needed you yesterday. Every woman deserves support when she brings a child into this world, but you chose cocktails and lies. If she doesn't wake up in the morning, it's on you. For a heartbeat, guilt pierced Robert's haze. He thought of Caroline's last text. It's time. Please come. I need you. He had brushed it aside. Now the words replayed in his head with a weight he couldn't shake. But Vanessa tightened her grip on him, her lips brushing his ear. Don't let them guilt you. She'll survive. She always does. Stay with me, Robert. You belong here. And Robert, weak, selfish, and desperate to preserve the illusion of his perfect escape, chose silence. "I'll be there tomorrow," he muttered and hung up. Ethan stared at the deadline in disbelief, his pulse pounding with rage. He looked at Caroline, pale and fragile on the bed, a mother who had just given everything to bring new life. And the man who vowed to protect her had abandoned her yet again. Ethan whispered fiercely, "You're not alone, Caroline, not as long as I'm here." But in another part of the city, Vanessa smiled in triumph, certain that Robert was hers completely, unaware that one devastating secret was about to unravel their entire world. The delivery room smelled of antiseptic and fear. Machines beeped erratically, filling the air with an urgent rhythm. Caroline's body convulsed as another wave of pain coursed through her. The sheets beneath her were already stained crimson. The nurses worked quickly, their voices sharp and clipped, but even through the haze of exhaustion, Caroline understood one terrifying word: hemorrhage. Her heart raced as though trying to outrun the truth. She was bleeding too much. Her body was betraying her at the very moment it was supposed to bring life. A cold chill seeped into her bones, even as sweat drenched her skin. Her lips trembled, forming words no one could hear. "Please, don't let me die." Dr. Ethan Hayes pressed gauze firmly against the wound, his expression grim but controlled. "Stay with me, Caroline," he urged, his eyes locking on hers. "You're stronger than this. I'm not letting you go." Her vision flickered in and out. She remembered fragments of her life, her first date with Robert, the wedding vows he spoke so smoothly, the nights she stayed up dreaming of a family. All those promises had led her here, alone, with death whispering in her ear. A sob caught in her throat. She didn't want her child to grow up motherless. Pressure dropping fast, a nurse shouted. The monitor's alarm wailed. Ethan barked, "Get the surgical kit and page the blood bank, now." Caroline's hand reached blindly across the bed. Ethan caught it, holding tight. His grip was warm, firm, a lifeline pulling her back from the edge. "I've got you," he whispered fiercely. "Don't give up. Your baby needs you. You've come too far to stop now." Her tears slid silently. She wanted to believe him, wanted to fight, but the darkness pulled stronger. She thought of the baby's tiny chest rising and falling, of lullabies she hadn't yet sung. She thought of her father, who would break if he lost his daughter tonight. The thought gave her the will to take one more breath. Meanwhile, across town, the music at the resort swelled with laughter and clinking glasses. Robert Dawson leaned back in his chair. Vanessa curled beside him, their hands entwined as if they belonged in some glamorous fairy tale. He didn't know, or didn't care, that his wife was battling for her life, drenched in blood instead of champagne. Vanessa tilted her head, watching him with a sly smile. "Forget about her. You're free now. With me, you can finally breathe." Robert raised his glass. The words "to us" left his lips just as Caroline's monitor flatlined for a fraction of a second. Ethan reacted instantly. Stark compressions, his hands pressed rhythmically against Caroline's chest, his face tight with determination. The room pulsed with urgency. Suction, clamps, nurses moving in a blur. The minutes stretched, each one a lifetime. "Come on, Caroline," Ethan muttered under his breath. "Come back to us. Come back to your baby." And then, finally, a faint, fragile cry pierced the chaos. The baby had arrived. A nurse lifted the tiny infant, its skin flushed and wrinkled, its cries desperate but alive. Caroline, weak and fading, turned her head toward the sound. Her lips curved into the faintest smile. "My baby," she whispered. Ethan placed the newborn against her chest. For a fleeting moment, warmth replaced the cold, despair gave way to love. Caroline's trembling arms wrapped around her child. Tears streaked her cheeks, not of pain this time, but of fierce devotion. But the danger wasn't over. The bleeding hadn't stopped. The monitor still screamed warnings. Ethan knew he was running out of options. "Prep the OR," he ordered. "If we don't stop this hemorrhage, we'll lose her." And as Caroline clutched her baby with the last of her strength, Robert clutched a champagne flute with Vanessa, completely blind to the fact that his wife was one heartbeat away from leaving this world forever. The piercing wail of a newborn cut through the tension like lightning, splitting a storm. For one blessed second, the chaos in the delivery room froze. Nurses glanced at each other with teary relief. Dr. Ethan Hayes let out a sharp breath, the lines of strain easing just slightly from his face. The child was alive. Against all odds, Caroline's baby had come into the world. A nurse swaddled the tiny boy in a soft blanket, rushing him over, his fists clenched, his cries fierce, as if he were demanding the world notice his arrival. Caroline's eyelids fluttered open, heavy with exhaustion. When they placed the infant against her chest, tears spilled down her cheeks. "My baby," she whispered, her voice barely audible. She touched the boy's cheek with trembling fingers, the warmth of life grounding her in this nightmare. For a fleeting moment, she forgot the blood, the fear, the absence of the man who should have been holding her hand. There was only love. Ethan watched the fragile scene, his chest tightening. He had delivered hundreds of babies, witnessed countless first cries, but this moment struck him differently. Maybe it was the way Caroline looked, broken yet unyielding, clinging to her son with every ounce of strength left in her. Or maybe it was the knowledge that Robert, the child's father, had abandoned her for another woman. Whatever it was, Ethan felt a surge of protectiveness burn inside him. The spell broke when a nurse called urgently, "Doctor, she's still losing blood." Ethan's expression hardened. "Get her to the OR. Now." Caroline's body trembled as they began to wheel her toward surgery. She clutched her baby tighter, unwilling to let go. Her eyes darted to Ethan, wide with fear. Don't take him from me, please." Ethan leaned down, his voice steady. "Your baby is safe, Caroline, but I need to save you now. Trust me." Her grip loosened reluctantly. The nurse lifted the infant from her arms, carrying him to the incubator. The baby's cries grew louder, echoing through the sterile room like a protest against the injustice. Caroline reached out, fingers stretching toward her child, even as she was wheeled away, tears blurring her vision. Meanwhile, across the city, the sounds were very different. Music swelled in the luxury resort's ballroom. Robert Dawson clinked glasses with investors, Vanessa beaming at his side. He laughed, unaware of the newborn's cry, unaware that his wife's life was still slipping away. He was basking in admiration, the kind of shallow applause that fed his pride but hollowed his soul. "Someday," Vanessa purred into his ear, "we'll have a baby of our own, one that's truly ours." Robert smirked, the idea pleasing his ego, but her words planted an unease he couldn't quite name. For a split second, Caroline's text flashed through his mind again. "It's time. Please come." He shook it off with another sip of champagne. Back at the hospital, Caroline's body grew weaker. Her breaths came shallow, her skin pale against the white sheets. The OR doors loomed ahead. Nurses spoke in clipped voices, preparing instruments, bags of blood hanging ready. Ethan stayed at her side, gripping her hand. "Stay awake, Caroline. Think of your baby's cry. That sound means you both have a future. Don't give up now." Her lips moved, barely forming words. "Promise?" "Promise you'll protect him." Ethan swallowed hard, his voice firm. "With my life." The OR doors slammed open. The team rushed inside. The baby's wails echoed faintly down the hall, haunting, desperate, a fragile tether between mother and child. And as the first cry of her son lingered in the sterile air, Caroline closed her eyes, unsure if she would ever open them again, while Robert lifted a toast to a future that was already crumbling beneath him. The sun rose over the city, but for Caroline Dawson, the world was still dark. She lay unconscious in the recovery room, her body drained after surgery. Tubes snaked across her arms, machines whispered steady rhythms, and beside her crib, her newborn slept peacefully. The hospital was a place of healing, but for Caroline, it was also a place of betrayal. Robert still hadn't arrived. Instead, his face filled phone screens across the country. Sometime in the night, photos had leaked onto social media. A series of glossy shots showed Robert Dawson at a luxury resort, arm wrapped tightly around Vanessa Moore. In one, they toasted with champagne, his grin wide, hers smug. In another, they lounged on the beach, his hand resting intimately on her thigh. The caption read, "While his pregnant wife struggled alone, billionaire Robert Dawson enjoyed a midnight escape with his mistress." The internet exploded. Comments poured in like fire. How could a man abandon his wife at her most vulnerable? Money can't buy morals. Shame on him. That poor woman giving birth alone. My heart breaks for her. By morning, the hashtag Stand with Caroline and #cancel Robert Dawson were trending worldwide. Investors who once admired Robert now distanced themselves. His company's stock dipped within hours. What should have been another victory lap for Robert turned into a public execution of his reputation. Vanessa scrolled through the backlash with narrowed eyes. "They'll forget in a week," she told him, brushing off the storm. "You're Robert Dawson. People love money and power. This will blow over." But Robert wasn't so sure. The phone in his hand buzzed non-stop with angry messages. His mother's furious voicemail, his father's cold disappointment, his board members demanding answers. For the first time in years, Robert felt something he hadn't known in his carefully curated life: fear. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, Caroline stirred awake. The first face she saw was not her husband's but Lily's, her best friend, eyes red from crying, clutching a bouquet of lilies. "Where's Robert?" Caroline croaked, her throat dry. Lily hesitated, then pulled out her phone. She showed Caroline the viral photos. Caroline's heart clenched. Her lips trembled, tears welling in her eyes. She had known Robert was unfaithful, had seen the warning signs, but seeing the evidence, public, undeniable, while she lay fragile and broken, was a knife through her soul. "He never came," Lily whispered. "Not last night, not this morning. Caroline, he chose her." A sob tore from Caroline's chest, shaking her weak body. She turned her face toward her baby's crib, gazing at the tiny boy who depended entirely on her. In that moment, grief gave way to something sharper: resolve. Robert might have abandoned her, but she would not abandon her child. Later that afternoon, a nurse entered with news. "The media's camped outside the hospital. They want a statement." Caroline shook her head. "No, not yet. I'm not strong enough." But Ethan Hayes, standing quietly at the corner, spoke gently. "Caroline, you don't have to face them now. Heal first. Gather your strength. The truth will wait. But when you're ready, it's your voice the world needs to hear." She nodded, clutching her baby close. Her eyes, though swollen with tears, held a flicker of determination. And while Caroline gathered strength for the battles ahead, Robert scrolled his phone in panic, unaware that one powerful ally was about to step into Caroline's life and shift the war entirely in her favor. Caroline Dawson sat propped against the hospital pillows, her newborn nestled in her arms. The baby's tiny breath steadied her heart, but her mind was restless. The world outside was roaring with judgment, anger, and pity. Inside, she was still weak, body trembling from blood loss. Every sound of footsteps in the hallway made her hope Robert had finally come. But the doorway remained empty. Instead, Dr. Ethan Hayes stepped inside. His expression was calm, but his eyes carried the weight of the night before. He checked the monitors, made quick notes on her chart, then turned to her with a softness that didn't match the chaos he had just survived. "You're stable for now," he said gently, "but you need rest, and you need support, real support." Caroline's lips quivered. "He never came, Ethan. I almost died, and Robert, he never came." Ethan pulled a chair closer, his voice low but firm. "I called him. I told him you were critical. Do you know what he said?" Caroline shook her head. "He said he'd come tomorrow. As if your life was just an appointment he could reschedule." The words sliced through her, but strangely, they also planted a seed. A final confirmation. The man she had built her life around no longer existed. All that remained was a selfish stranger. Tears streaked down her face, but Ethan leaned forward. "Caroline, you're not alone in this. Not anymore. I saw how he abandoned you. I saw how you fought, and I promise you this, I will stand beside you. Whatever battle is coming, you won't face it by yourself." Caroline blinked at him, startled. She had always known Ethan as a quiet memory from her past, a boy who once looked at her like she was the center of the world. Now here he was, a man offering strength when she had none left. Before she could respond, the door swung open. Lily entered, holding her phone. Her face was pale. "Caroline, it's worse. Robert's lawyers are already making statements. They're saying you're unstable, that you exaggerated your medical crisis, that you're not fit to raise the baby alone." Caroline clutched her child closer, her heart hammering. "They want to take him from me." Ethan stood, his voice sharp. "Over my dead body, I'll testify to every detail of last night, to your condition, to his absence, to how close you came to death. They want to drag you through the mud? Fine, but the truth is on your side, and I'll make sure the world hears it." Lily looked between them, hope flickering. "He's right, Caroline. You don't have to stay silent anymore. You have allies now. Me, your father, and Ethan. We'll build this case, piece by piece. He left you at your weakest, and that's something no court and no public will forgive." Caroline's tears dried. Her gaze hardened. For the first time since the baby's cry had filled the room, she felt more than grief. She felt resolve. She kissed her son's forehead. Then we fight. For him. For me. For the truth. Outside the hospital, cameras flashed as reporters shouted questions. Inside, a quiet storm was building. Caroline had nearly lost everything, but now she had something stronger than pain. She had purpose. And as Robert paced in his penthouse, Vanessa whispering poisonous reassurances in his ear, he had no idea that the very doctor who saved Caroline's life was about to expose a devastating truth that could destroy him completely. The hospital room was hushed except for the steady beeping of machines. Caroline Dawson rocked her newborn gently, the baby's soft cries calming into quiet breaths. Across from her, Dr. Ethan Hayes sat with a folder in his lap, his jaw tight. He had been debating for hours whether to tell her. But the moment Robert's legal team began painting Caroline as unstable, Ethan knew silence was no longer an option. "Caroline," he began carefully, "there's something you need to know, something that might change everything." Her eyes lifted, weary but alert. "What is it?" Ethan opened the folder. Medical records, lab results, documents stamped years ago. "I looked into Robert's medical history. He's been a patient at another clinic for years. Records show he underwent multiple treatments. The truth is, Robert has been medically infertile for a long time." Caroline blinked, stunned. "Infertile? But—" She looked down at her baby. Confusion twisted into disbelief. "That's impossible." Ethan's voice was steady. "Not for you. Remember last year? You confided once that Robert wanted a baby, but never came with you to the appointments. That's when you chose assisted conception. You never told him because you thought it would bruise his pride. Caroline, this child is yours entirely. Biologically, Robert could never have fathered him." Her breath caught, the truth hitting her like a tidal wave. She remembered those lonely visits to the clinic, the whispered prayers, the hope that motherhood might heal the cracks in her marriage. And Robert? He had played the loving husband only when it suited his image, never admitting he already knew the truth of his condition. Tears spilled from her eyes, but this time they weren't of weakness. They were of clarity. "So all this time, he let me believe. He let the world believe. And now he's trying to call me unfit?" Ethan leaned closer, his gaze unwavering. "He's built his empire on lies. But this is one lie he can't escape. If he takes you to court, if he tries to claim this child, it will all come out. His reputation, his company, his empire. It will burn." Lily, who had been listening silently, gasped. "Caroline, don't you see? This is your shield. He can't touch you. If he pushes, we'll reveal everything." Caroline cradled her baby tighter, her mind spinning. Part of her wanted to scream, part of her wanted to laugh bitterly. The man who humiliated her, who abandoned her in her darkest hour, wasn't even capable of giving her the one thing he boasted about, a family. "Then let him try," she whispered fiercely. "Let him stand in court and point his finger at me. Because when the truth comes out, he'll have nothing left." Outside, the media storm was growing. Robert's company stock continued to plunge as headlines multiplied. Where was Robert Dawson during his wife's delivery? Photos of Mistress spark outrage. Behind closed doors, Robert barked at his lawyers, demanding they crush Caroline before the public sympathy grew any stronger. But the lawyers exchanged uneasy glances. "Sir, if opposing counsel uncovers certain medical files, this could destroy everything." Robert's face drained of color. He knew exactly what they meant. He had hidden that truth for years. If Caroline found out, his empire would crumble overnight. And as Caroline held her child with new strength, Robert realized the lie he thought was buried forever was about to rise. And it was a secret powerful enough to end him. Caroline Dawson sat at the edge of her hospital bed, her baby resting in a bassinet beside her. The morning light filtered weakly through the blinds, but inside her heart, a fire had ignited. For days, she had been silent, too broken to answer the whispers of the world outside. But now, armed with the truth Ethan had revealed, she knew silence was no longer an option. Lily paced the room, phone in hand. "Caroline, the press is everywhere. They want your side. Right now, the public only knows Robert's lawyers calling you unstable. If you don't speak soon, he'll control the narrative." Caroline tightened her grip on her baby's blanket. She looked down at her son, so small, yet so strong. "Then I'll speak," she said firmly. "Not just for me, for him, for every woman who's ever been silenced." Ethan leaned against the wall, arms crossed, his expression one of both caution and admiration. If you go public, Caroline, there's no turning back. Robert will throw everything he has at you. Are you ready for that storm? She met his gaze, unflinching. He left me to die. He humiliated me. And now he wants to take my child. I'm not afraid of storms anymore. I already survived one. Lily's eyes lit with determination. Then let's do this. I'll set up a press conference. No spin, no manipulation, just you telling the truth. The next afternoon, the hospital lobby transformed into a battleground. Cameras flashed, reporters jostled for space, microphones thrust forward. Security formed a tight circle around Caroline as she walked slowly toward the podium, her father and Lily at her side, Ethan standing quietly in the background. She looked pale, still recovering, but her posture was straight, her eyes resolute. The murmurs died down as she adjusted the microphone. Her voice trembled at first but grew steadier with every word. I am Caroline Dawson. A few nights ago I gave birth to my son alone. I nearly lost my life while my husband chose to spend the night with another woman. That is the truth. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The cameras clicked furiously. Caroline drew a breath, steadying herself. I will not be shamed. I will not be silenced. And I will not allow anyone, husband, mistress, or lawyer, to call me unfit to raise my child. I am his mother, and I am enough. The lobby erupted in applause, not from reporters but from patients, nurses, even bystanders who had gathered. The live broadcast spread like wildfire across social media. Hashtags shifted. Sympathy turned to outrage. Outrage aimed squarely at Robert. At the penthouse across town, Robert watched the broadcast with his lawyers. His jaw tightened as Caroline's face filled the screen. Vanessa rolled her eyes. She's playing the victim. Don't worry, the public will forget. But the lawyers didn't look so confident. One muttered, if she pushes further, if she reveals what we're afraid of, you won't just lose public favor. You'll lose everything. Robert slammed his glass onto the table, wine spilling across polished wood. She wouldn't dare. But deep inside, fear clawed at him. Caroline was no longer the quiet wife who endured in silence. She was standing, speaking, fighting, and the world was listening. Back at the hospital, Caroline stepped away from the podium, her baby cradled in her arms. She whispered softly, "We'll be okay, my love. No one will take you from me." But even as the crowd cheered her courage, Robert was dialing a number in secret, summoning an ally who could strike back at Caroline in ways she never expected. Robert Dawson's penthouse was silent except for the ticking of a clock and the muffled hum of the city below. His phone buzzed with headlines, notifications, and angry emails. Caroline's press conference had shaken his world. His empire, built carefully over years, now looked like a tower of glass ready to shatter. Vanessa paced the room in her silk robe, her face tight with frustration. You can't let her control the story. She made you look like a monster. You have to hit her back harder. Robert's jaw flexed as he scrolled through the avalanche of criticism. Words like coward, abuser, traitor filled the screen. He slammed the phone down. Then we will hit her back. She wants a fight? I'll give her one she'll regret. The following morning, Caroline woke to the sound of her father's voice trembling as he read the headlines aloud. Robert Dawson claims wife mentally unstable, questions raised over baby's paternity. Caroline's blood ran cold. She snatched the tablet from his hands. Her husband's face filled the screen, smug and controlled as he stood before reporters. My wife has been struggling emotionally for years, Robert declared smoothly. While I sympathize, I must prioritize the safety of my child. Until her condition improves, I will be pursuing custody. Gasps filled the crowd in the footage. The implication was poisonous. He wasn't just calling her weak, he was calling her unfit. Lily stormed into the hospital room, phone in hand. He leaked sealed medical records, Caroline, fabricated ones. He paid a clinic to claim you had a breakdown after college. He's trying to erase your credibility before the court date. Caroline clutched her baby close, fury coursing through her veins. He'll lie about anything to win, even if it means destroying me completely. Ethan entered, his expression grim. It's worse. He's filed for an emergency hearing. If the judge believes his claims, he could get temporary custody until the trial. The room spun. Caroline's heart pounded. The thought of Robert, cold, selfish Robert, holding her baby, using him as a pawn, filled her with terror. Her father placed a strong, weathered hand on her shoulder. "You won't lose him. Not while I'm alive." But even as he spoke, Caroline's phone buzzed with a new message. No name, just a number. The text read, "If you keep pushing, more secrets will come out. Secrets you don't want the world to know." Caroline's hands shook. She looked at Lily, then Ethan. "He's threatening me. What more could he possibly have?" Ethan exchanged a look with Lily. "It's intimidation. He wants you scared, but you can't back down now." Caroline's tears burned hot. She had endured betrayal, humiliation, nearly lost her life, and now Robert wanted to take her son, the only light left in her world. She stood, her body still weak but her spirit unyielding. "If he wants a war, he'll get one. He's forgotten who I am. I'm not just his wife, I'm a mother, and I will burn his lies to the ground." The baby stirred in her arms as if sensing his mother's resolve. Caroline kissed his forehead. But even as she spoke, Robert was meeting secretly with a ruthless ally, an investigator willing to dig into every corner of Caroline's past, prepared to uncover a twist so shocking it could destroy her in front of the entire world. Robert Dawson sat in the back of his black SUV, city lights flashing across his face. His jaw was clenched, his mind racing. Caroline had blindsided him with her press conference. Now public sympathy was with her, and his carefully crafted reputation was in ruins. He needed a weapon. A lethal one. Across from him sat Victor Kane, a man whispered about in courtrooms and feared by half the city's elite. An investigator who specialized in dirt, the kind of dirt that could bury anyone, no matter how clean they appeared. Robert leaned forward, his voice sharp. "Find me something on her? Anything. I don't care what it costs." Victor smirked, his scarred face illuminated by the glow of his tablet. "Everyone has secrets, Dawson. Wives, husbands, even saints. I'll dig until I find hers." Within hours, Victor had his team combing through Caroline's past. Old school records, medical files, financial statements, neighbors willing to whisper for cash. He dug where no one else dared. And finally, he struck gold. Or what he believed was gold. The following evening, Victor slid a manila folder across Robert's desk. "Your wife isn't the innocent angel the public thinks she is." Robert opened the folder. Inside were documents, hospital visits from years ago when Caroline had sought therapy for anxiety after her mother's sudden death. Nothing scandalous, nothing shameful, but Victor spun it like poison. With the right words, this looks like evidence of mental instability. Combine that with the hemorrhage, we can argue she's unfit to raise a child alone. Robert's lips curled into a satisfied grin. Perfect. The court will eat this up. But Victor wasn't done. He tapped the last page, his voice low. "There's more. Caroline's pregnancy. It didn't happen the way you think. These records suggest she underwent fertility treatments. She didn't conceive naturally, which raises a very simple, very dangerous question. Whose child is she raising?" Robert froze. His knuckles turned white against the folder. He had hidden his infertility for years, terrified of the humiliation. Now, the truth he had buried was clawing its way out. "No," he muttered. "She told me." Victor shrugged, cold and unbothered. "Maybe she told you what you wanted to hear. But the records don't lie. If this gets out, people will start asking questions, questions you won't want to answer." For the first time, Robert felt the ground beneath him crack. If the world learned he was infertile, his entire legacy as a powerful family man would crumble. Investors would abandon him. His enemies would circle like vultures. But then his pride hardened. No one can ever know this. Spin it. Make it about her. Say she cheated. Say she lied. Make her look like the traitor. Victor's smirk returned. "As you wish, but remember, when you play with fire, you don't always control where it spreads." Back at the hospital, Caroline sat with Lily and Ethan, unaware of the storm brewing. She fed her baby slowly, her eyes heavy but hopeful. She whispered promises into the child's ear. "I'll protect you, no matter what it takes." Her peace shattered when Lily's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her face paling. "Caroline, oh my God, he's not just going after your stability, he's going after your son's paternity." Caroline's heart lurched. Her grip tightened on the baby. What? And in that instant, Caroline realized Robert wasn't just trying to destroy her. He was ready to weaponize the very secret she thought would never surface. The hospital room was quiet, a fragile peace hanging in the air. Caroline Dawson sat in the armchair by the window, rocking her newborn gently. Outside, the world still raged with hashtags and headlines, but inside, she found comfort in the steady rhythm of her son's breathing. That peace shattered when Lily burst through the door, phone clutched in her trembling hand. "Caroline, you need to see this." Caroline's stomach tightened. She glanced at Ethan, who was standing by the crib, and then reached for the phone. The screen lit with breaking news. Robert Dawson's team claims wife deceived him about the child's paternity. Her blood ran cold. Beneath the headline were Robert's words, captured on video at a press conference. "I've discovered deeply troubling evidence. My wife sought fertility treatments behind my back. She misled me, our families, and the public. This child may not even be mine. Until the truth is proven, I cannot trust her to raise him." The clip ended with Robert standing tall, Vanessa at his side, her arm linked with his. Caroline's world tilted. Her hands shook as she gripped the phone. He's saying my son isn't his? That I lied?" Lily's eyes blazed with fury. "He twisted everything. He knows about the fertility treatments, but instead of admitting his condition, he's painting you as the betrayer." Ethan stepped forward, his face hard with controlled anger. "This is reckless. He's gambling with the child's future just to save his pride." Caroline's chest ached. Memories flooded back. Those lonely clinic visits, the whispered encouragement from doctors, her desperate hope that a child might bring Robert closer to her. She had done it for love, for family, and now that love was weaponized against her. The baby stirred, letting out a small cry. Caroline clutched him to her chest, tears spilling freely. How dare he? How dare he use my son as a shield for his lies?" Ethan crouched beside her. "You can fight this. You have the truth. And you have me." Lily's phone buzzed again. She glanced down, her expression grim. "Caroline, it's worse. Social media is running with his version. People are calling you a liar, a cheater. They're saying you trapped him with another man's baby." Caroline's breath hitched, pain lancing through her. The world was turning against her, just when she needed strength the most. Her voice cracked. "I can't let my son grow up thinking he was unwanted, that he was a scandal." Ethan's voice was firm. "Then we expose him. We reveal the medical truth, the infertility, the treatments, everything." But Caroline hesitated. Her heart was torn. Revealing Robert's secret would destroy him, yes, but it would also expose her son's conception story to the world. Did she have the right to make her child's life a headline? Her father entered quietly then, carrying a cup of tea. He looked between their faces and understood instantly. He set the cup down and placed his rough, steady hand on Caroline's shoulder. "Daughter, sometimes the truth hurts. But lies, they poison everything. If you let him keep lying, he'll poison your boy's future. You do what you must to protect him." Caroline wiped her tears, strength returning to her eyes. "Then I won't stay silent anymore. If Robert wants war, I'll give him one." But as Caroline prepared to step into battle, Robert was already planning his next move. One so ruthless it could strip her of everything she loved in a single stroke. The courtroom was packed, cameras flashing outside the heavy oak doors. Inside, the tension was suffocating. Caroline Dawson sat at the plaintiff's table, Lily at her side, stacks of files neatly arranged. She clutched her baby's blanket in her lap, a silent reminder of what this fight was about. Across from her, Robert Dawson entered in a tailored suit, Vanessa trailing behind like a shadow, her smirk daring anyone to question her place. The judge called for silence. "This is a custody and fitness hearing. Both parties will be heard. Let us begin." Robert's lawyer, a slick man with a voice like oil, stood first. "Your Honor, my client seeks temporary custody to protect the child. Mrs. Dawson has a history of emotional instability, including documented therapy visits in her youth. And most concerning, she misled her husband about the conception of this child. We have evidence she underwent fertility treatments in secret. This raises grave concerns about paternity and her honesty." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Caroline's cheeks flushed with humiliation. She wanted to scream, to shout that she had done it for love, not betrayal. But Lily squeezed her hand, urging patience. When it was their turn, Lily rose, her voice sharp and clear. "Your Honor, what my colleague conveniently ignores is that Caroline sought therapy after her mother's death, a normal and healthy response to grief. To twist that into instability is not only cruel, it's dangerous. And as for the fertility treatments, yes, she pursued them, with Robert's knowledge, with his blessing. Because Robert Dawson has been medically infertile for years, he knew it, he hid it, and now he dares accuse the mother of this child of deception. Gasps filled the courtroom. Robert's face drained of color, his mask cracking. He slammed a hand on the table. "Lies!" he shouted. "She's lying!" The judge rapped his gavel. "Order! Mr. Dawson, control yourself." Lily continued, unshaken. "We have medical documentation, Your Honor. We also have a witness, Dr. Ethan Hayes, the attending physician during Mrs. Dawson's delivery. He can testify not only to her near-death experience caused by her husband's absence, but also to the medical truth Robert has denied." All eyes turned to Ethan as he stepped forward, sworn in, his voice steady. "It is true. Robert Dawson has a documented history of infertility treatments. Caroline's pregnancy was the result of medical assistance, which Robert was aware of. His accusations are not only false, they're an attempt to weaponize private information to cover his own shame." The room erupted. Reporters scribbled furiously. Vanessa's smirk faltered. Robert's lawyer stammered, "Objection, Your Honor, this is irrelevant to custody." The judge leaned forward, eyes piercing. "What is relevant is whether this man has acted in good faith. So far, the evidence suggests he has not." "Continue." Caroline's chest swelled with hope. For the first time, the truth was no longer her burden alone. It was spoken aloud, undeniable. She glanced at her baby's picture tucked inside her folder and whispered silently, "We're winning." But Robert wasn't finished. His eyes burned with desperation and rage. He leaned close to his lawyer, whispering something that made the man blanch. The lawyer hesitated, then rose again. "Your Honor, if Mrs. Dawson insists on dragging private medical history into the light, then perhaps she would not mind if we reveal one more truth. A truth about her past that proves she is not the saint she pretends to be." Caroline froze. Her stomach twisted. What past? What truth? She searched her memory, panic flooding her veins. And as the judge ordered the lawyer to proceed, Caroline realized Robert was about to unleash a secret she never expected, one that could destroy her case in a single blow. The courtroom was so silent that the ticking clock above the judge's bench felt deafening. Caroline Dawson's heartbeat thundered in her ears as Robert's lawyer stood, adjusting his tie with deliberate calm. Every word that followed came like a dagger aimed straight at her. "Your Honor," the lawyer began smoothly, "while my client's infertility is unfortunate, it does not excuse deception. Mrs. Dawson has chosen to paint herself as a victim, but we have uncovered evidence that challenges her credibility entirely." He lifted a paper from his file and held it aloft. "Years ago, Mrs. Dawson was arrested for reckless endangerment. She caused a car accident while emotionally distraught, injuring herself and nearly injuring another driver. Though charges were later dismissed, the record exists. Is this the picture of stability we want, raising an infant alone?" The gasp echoed through the room. Caroline's eyes widened in horror. Her hands trembled as memories she had buried clawed to the surface. She was 20 at the time, broken after her mother's sudden death. One night, she had driven through a rainstorm, blinded by tears. She lost control, skidding into a guardrail. No one else was hurt, but the police had charged her. The case was dismissed after therapy and community service. She had worked tirelessly to move forward, never imagining it would resurface now, weaponized against her in front of the world. Robert sat back, his lips curling into a smug smile. Vanessa squeezed his arm, her eyes glittering with satisfaction. Lily shot to her feet. "Objection! That case was dismissed. It has no relevance to her ability as a mother today." The lawyer smirked. "Objection or not, it speaks volumes about her judgment and emotional instability. Combine that with her secrecy about fertility treatments, and the pattern is clear. Mrs. Dawson is not fit to raise this child alone." The judge rapped his gavel for silence, his eyes narrowing. "Mrs. Dawson, how do you respond?" Caroline's throat tightened. Her mind screamed to defend herself, but shame gripped her like iron chains. The eyes of strangers bore into her, judging, dissecting her worth as a mother. She looked at her baby's photo lying on the table, her son's innocent face staring back. Tears welled in her eyes as she stood, her voice trembling but audible. "Yes, I was arrested. I was 20, grieving, and I made a mistake that could have cost me my life. But I learned. I healed, I built myself back up, and I will not let my worst moment define me forever, because I have something now that I didn't then. My son. and I would die before I let anyone hurt him. Her words rang through the room, strong despite the tremor. A murmur of sympathy rippled through the gallery. But Robert's lawyer wasn't finished. He leaned forward, voice dripping with venom. "Tell me, Mrs. Dawson, if you could lose control once, what's to stop you from losing control again? What happens when your baby cries all night, when the stress becomes too much? Will you drive recklessly with him in the car next time? Will you endanger him the way you endangered others?" The accusation sliced through her like a blade. Caroline's knees nearly buckled. But Ethan stepped forward from the witness stand, his voice cutting through the tension. "Enough. You're crucifying a woman for surviving grief. That doesn't make her unfit. It makes her human." The judge slammed his gavel again. "Order. This line of questioning will be limited, but the court will consider all evidence presented." Caroline sat, her chest heaving, her soul shaking. The truth had been twisted into a weapon, and as she fought to steady herself, Robert leaned back with a dark smile because he knew this was only the first of many weapons he planned to unleash against her. The courtroom buzzed with whispers after Robert's lawyer revealed Caroline's past. The gavel struck sharply. "Order," the judge barked, silencing the noise. "We will now hear from the medical witness, Dr. Ethan Hayes." Ethan rose from his seat, tall and composed, though his jaw was tight with restrained anger. He had watched Robert's lawyer twist Caroline's past into a weapon, watched her tremble under the weight of humiliation. But now it was his turn, and he intended to tell the truth. He placed his hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat in the witness chair. The judge nodded. "Proceed." Robert's lawyer smirked. "Dr. Hayes, you were the attending physician at the birth, correct?" "Yes," Ethan answered firmly. "And you claim Mrs. Dawson nearly died. But isn't childbirth dangerous for many women? Isn't it possible you are exaggerating the situation to garner sympathy?" Ethan's eyes flashed. "No, sir. Caroline Dawson suffered a massive hemorrhage. She required immediate surgical intervention and blood transfusions. If I had arrived even 5 minutes later, she and the child could both be dead. That is not an exaggeration. That is fact." Gasps echoed across the courtroom. Caroline closed her eyes, remembering the terror of that night. The lawyer leaned in. "And where was my client, Mr. Dawson, during this alleged crisis?" Ethan's voice sharpened. "He was not there. I personally called him at 3 a.m., warning him that his wife's life was in danger. He refused to come. He chose to stay at a resort with another woman instead." The gallery erupted in shocked murmurs. Reporters scribbled furiously. Robert's face reddened as he slammed his fist against the table. "That's a lie," he shouted. The judge glared. "Mr. Dawson, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt." Ethan continued, unshaken. "I have the call records, Your Honor. They prove I contacted him that night, and his absence was not a mistake. It was a choice." Robert's lawyer tried to recover. "Doctor, with all due respect, your testimony seems unusually personal. Are you sure your feelings for Mrs. Dawson aren't influencing your words?" The insinuation hung heavy. Vanessa smirked from her seat, clearly enjoying the dig. Ethan leaned forward, his voice steady but full of conviction. "This isn't about feelings. This is about facts. Caroline Dawson is alive because she fought like hell to survive, and the man who should have been at her side abandoned her in the moment she needed him most. That's the truth, and I will stand by it under oath." Caroline's heart swelled with gratitude and fear. Ethan's words were bold, perhaps too bold, but they pierced through the lies Robert had wrapped himself in. The judge scribbled notes, his expression unreadable. The courtroom was silent, every ear tuned to the weight of Ethan's testimony. Robert's lawyer, desperate, tried one last attack. "Dr. Hayes, are you aware that your testimony could ruin a man's career, his reputation, his livelihood?" Ethan's gaze turned to Robert, unwavering. "If a reputation is built on lies and abandonment, then maybe it deserves to be ruined." The gallery erupted again, reporters nearly falling over themselves. The judge slammed his gavel. "Order! Order in the court!" Caroline clutched her baby's blanket, hope flickering in her chest for the first time in days. The truth was finally being spoken aloud, in a place where it mattered. But as the session ended, Robert leaned toward his lawyer, his expression dark and cold. "If they want war, I'll give them war. Release the footage." The day after Ethan's testimony, Caroline Dawson woke to a storm she hadn't seen coming. She had barely held her baby long enough to calm him before Lily rushed into the hospital room, her face pale, phone shaking in her hand. "Caroline, you need to see this," Lily whispered. Caroline's stomach dropped. She took the phone and pressed play. On the screen was grainy footage, clearly taken years ago. A younger Caroline was outside a clinic, her face streaked with tears. She was pacing, clutching her stomach, her words caught faintly on the audio. "I can't do this anymore. I don't want this." The video cut abruptly, but the damage was already done. Headlines blazed across the screen. Caroline Dawson considered abandoning motherhood. Is she stable enough to raise a child? Caroline's breath caught in her throat. This was years ago. After my miscarriage, I was broken. I didn't mean. Her voice trailed off, choked with grief. Ethan's jaw tightened as he stood behind her, fury flashing in his eyes. This is manipulation. They twisted your pain into ammunition. Lily scrolled through the endless comments flooding social media. They're running with it. Robert's team leaked it, I know it. People are calling you a liar, a danger, even unfit. Caroline's chest burned as if someone had poured acid into her veins. She remembered that day vividly, the heartbreak of losing a pregnancy, the crushing despair that made her question if she could ever survive motherhood. She had walked into that clinic for counseling, not to abandon life, but to find a reason to keep going. Now the world believed the worst version of her. Across town, Robert leaned back in his leather chair, sipping whiskey, watching the coverage unfold. Vanessa perched on the armrest, stroking his shoulder. See, now she's the unstable one. Now the world doubts her. Robert smirked, his ego fed by the chaos. Let her try to fight back. Every time she speaks, I'll bury her deeper. Back in the hospital, Caroline's father entered the room quietly, his weathered hands clenched in fists. He crossed a line. Using your grief against you? That's not a man. It's a coward. Caroline buried her face against her baby's soft head, tears soaking the blanket. How do I fight him when he controls the narrative, when he twists everything I've ever lived through? Ethan knelt beside her, his voice low but fierce. By telling the truth before he can. If he wants to weaponize your past, then we'll show it for what it really was. Not weakness, but survival. You fought your way through pain and you came out stronger. That's what the world needs to see. Lily nodded, determination sparking in her eyes. We'll hold another press conference. We'll bring the miscarriage records, the counseling notes, proof that you sought help, not escape. They want to shame you for seeking healing? Let's flip it. Show every woman watching that there's no shame in surviving grief. Caroline lifted her head, her tears drying into resolve. She looked at her son, his tiny fist curled around her finger. If I stay silent, he wins. If I speak, maybe I give hope to someone else who thinks she can't survive. No more shame, no more hiding. Her voice grew stronger. We fight back, again. But as Caroline prepared to step into the spotlight once more, Robert's team was already preparing their deadliest weapon yet, one that could drag another innocent person into the crossfire. Caroline Dawson thought she had seen Robert at his worst, abandoning her during childbirth, accusing her of betrayal, even leaking footage of her grief. But she hadn't seen the depth of his ruthlessness. Not yet. The morning news cycle struck like a bomb. Caroline was feeding her baby when the television in her hospital room blared with breaking headlines. Doctor Who testified for Caroline Dawson exposed in scandal. Caroline froze, the bottle slipping from her trembling hand. The screen filled with a photo of Dr. Ethan Hayes walking into the courthouse, but the headlines screamed another story. Affair between Caroline Dawson and her doctor? Her stomach dropped. No, she whispered. No, this can't be happening. Lily burst into the room, phone buzzing nonstop. They're accusing you and Ethan of having an affair behind Robert's back. Robert's team leaked messages, doctored messages, that make it look like you two were secretly together. Caroline's face burned with humiliation. Ethan had saved her life. He had stood by her in court. And now, Robert had twisted their loyalty into something sordid. They'll destroy him because of me, she whispered. Ethan arrived minutes later, his expression grim but steady. He dropped a stack of papers onto the table. These are fabricated. Timestamps don't match. But in the court of public opinion, it won't matter. They want people to believe you cheated on Robert with me, and that this baby is mine. Caroline's breath caught. Mine and yours? That's what they're saying? Ethan nodded solemnly. Robert wants to erase his infertility by pinning the child on me. If he convinces people, he walks away untarnished. And I lose my medical license for crossing a line. It's a win-win for him. Caroline's father slammed his fist against the table, his voice shaking with rage. That bastard will burn everyone just to save himself. The baby began to cry, sensing the tension. Caroline scooped him up, tears blurring her vision. She rocked him gently, whispering, "I'll protect you. I swear it." But her mind screamed in panic. Robert's lies were spreading faster than she could breathe. Social media was already ablaze. No wonder she didn't want a DNA test. The doctor is the real father. She trapped Robert. Her reputation was crumbling, Ethan's career teetered on the edge, and her baby's very identity was being shredded by public gossip. Lily slammed her phone down. "We can't let this stand. Ethan will file a defamation suit. Caroline will demand the fake messages be examined by a forensic expert. If we prove tampering, we can bury Robert in his own lies." Ethan placed a reassuring hand on Caroline's shoulder. "I'll take the heat if I have to. Let them investigate me. I can survive it. But you and your son, you need to come out of this clean." Caroline's eyes filled with both gratitude and fury. "No, Ethan, he doesn't just want to destroy me anymore. He wants to destroy us. Everyone who stands beside me, I won't let him." Her voice hardened, her spine straightening. "If Robert wants to play dirty, then we'll bring the one thing he can't fight, irrefutable proof. His infertility records, the court files, everything he's tried to bury. We won't just defend ourselves, we'll expose him." The baby's cries quieted as Caroline kissed his forehead. For the first time, her fear transformed into something sharper: vengeance. But as she vowed to fight back with proof, Robert was already one step ahead, plotting to use the courtroom itself as the stage for his deadliest ambush yet. The second hearing drew an even bigger crowd than the first. Reporters swarmed outside the courthouse, microphones flashing, cameras rolling, eager for the next headline. Caroline Dawson held her baby tightly as she entered, Lily at her side, Ethan trailing close behind. She had expected another day of testimony. What she didn't expect was the ambush Robert had planned. The judge called the session to order. Robert sat tall in his chair, smugness radiating from his every move. Vanessa leaned forward, whispering in his ear with a smile that dripped with malice. Robert's lawyer stood, voice booming with false confidence. "Your Honor, before we proceed with further testimony, my client requests to present new evidence. Evidence that questions not only Mrs. Dawson's fitness as a mother, but also the credibility of her so-called allies." Caroline stiffened, her grip tightening on the blanket wrapped around her child. Lily leaned toward her, whispering, "He's setting a trap. Stay calm." The lawyer pressed a button on a remote. A projector flickered to life, filling the courtroom wall with video. Grainy footage appeared. Caroline's heart stopped. It was security camera footage from the hospital. Her in the delivery room, her body weak, clinging to Ethan's hand as he leaned close, whispering encouragement. But the audio had been manipulated. The words Ethan had spoken, "Stay with me, you're not alone," had been twisted into something else entirely. The distorted audio blared, "You're mine now. He'll never know the truth." Gasps exploded in the courtroom. Reporters scribbled, cameras flashed. Vanessa smirked, savoring every shocked expression. Caroline jumped to her feet. "That's a lie. That's not what he said." The judge slammed the gavel. "Order! Sit down, Mrs. Dawson." Ethan's face burned with fury. "Your Honor, this footage has been altered. I never said those words. I was saving her life. Anyone in that room can testify to it." Robert leaned back, feigning hurt. "You see, Your Honor? Not only did she deceive me, she's carrying on with another man under the guise of medical care. And this man conveniently testifies on her behalf." The lawyer pressed again, and another clip played. Photos of Ethan visiting Caroline's hospital room at night, holding the baby, smiling down at her. The narrative was clear. Robert was spinning their bond into an affair. Caroline's voice cracked, raw with anguish. "He saved my life. He saved my baby's life. That's not betrayal, that's humanity." But the courtroom was buzzing with whispers, poisoned by the manipulation. The judge rubbed his temples. "This court will require verification of this footage. Until then, its authenticity is questionable." But the damage was done. The seed of doubt had been planted. Caroline collapsed back into her chair, clutching her child like a shield. Tears blurred her vision, but beneath the pain, anger began to simmer. Robert wasn't just trying to take her child. He was trying to erase her dignity, her truth, her very identity. Ethan leaned toward her, voice low. "Don't break Caroline. This is what he wants. But remember, we have the real truth, the records, the call logs, his infertility. We'll turn this trap against him." She nodded, though her heart pounded like thunder. And as the gavel struck to adjourn the day, Robert smirked coldly, because he knew his next move would be even deadlier, a revelation capable of ending Caroline's fight once and for all. The courtroom was tense as the final day of hearings began. Every seat was filled, every reporter's pen poised, every camera aimed at Caroline Dawson and her estranged husband Robert. The air was heavy, as if everyone knew something explosive was about to happen. Caroline sat upright, her baby in her father's arms a few rows back. She wore no makeup, no pretense, only the quiet strength of a woman who had survived betrayal, near death, and public humiliation. Beside her, Lily shuffled through documents, her lips pressed into a thin line. Ethan sat behind them, calm on the surface but ready to defend her with everything he had. Robert entered with Vanessa at his side, smug as ever, but there was a glint of desperation behind his eyes. He knew his empire was cracking. Today, he had one last chance to crush Caroline before the judge delivered a verdict. The judge called the court to order. "Mr. Dawson, your counsel may proceed." Robert's lawyer stood, his smile cold. "Your Honor, before you consider custody, there is one final piece of evidence we must present. Evidence that reveals the full extent of Mrs. Dawson's deception." Caroline's stomach clenched. Lily whispered, "Brace yourself." The lights dimmed. On the screen behind the lawyer appeared documents, emails, clinic notes, receipts. The lawyer's voice thundered. "These files show that Caroline Dawson not only pursued fertility treatments in secret, but she also selected an anonymous donor without her husband's knowledge. And Your Honor, we have reason to believe that donor was not anonymous at all." Gasps filled the room. Caroline's heart raced. "That's a lie," she shouted, but the judge silenced her with a raised hand. The lawyer pressed on, his words sharp as knives. "We present the possibility that Dr. Ethan Hayes, the very man testifying on her behalf, may in fact be the biological father of this child." The courtroom erupted in chaos. Reporters jumped to their feet, cameras flashing. Vanessa smirked, whispering something gleeful into Robert's ear. Caroline's face burned hot, her throat tight. "No, that's impossible." Ethan stood, fury radiating from him. "This is slander. I have never been a donor for Caroline Dawson or any case connected to her. This is a fabrication." But the lawyer waved a paper in the air. "We have a witness from the clinic who claims Dr. Hayes was present during Caroline's treatment. Coincidence or conspiracy?" The judge rapped the gavel, trying to restore order. "Enough. This court will not descend into circus theatrics." But the seed had been planted. Whispers tore through the gallery like wildfire. Reporters murmured, "Doctor's the father?" Secret affair confirmed. Caroline's eyes filled with tears. Not because she believed Robert's lies, she knew the truth, but because the world outside the courtroom would devour this story. Her son's life, his very identity, was being dragged across headlines as entertainment. Ethan leaned close, his voice steady despite the storm. "Look at me, Caroline. You know the truth. I'll prove it. We can subpoena the clinic, run tests, whatever it takes. Don't let him win." She nodded faintly, but her hands trembled as she held her son tighter. This wasn't just about custody anymore. This was about her child's very existence being branded as scandal. The judge raised a hand. "This court will review all evidence before making a decision. Tomorrow, we will reconvene for the verdict." Caroline's knees nearly buckled. Tomorrow. One more night of waiting. One more night of uncertainty. And as Robert left the courtroom with a victorious smirk, Caroline whispered to her baby, "Hold on, my love. Tomorrow, everything changes, one way or another." The final day of court arrived with a gray sky pressing heavy over the city. Crowds gathered outside the courthouse, cameras waiting to capture history. Inside, the air was thick with tension. It wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about truth, dignity, and survival. Caroline Dawson walked into the courtroom holding her baby close. Her father and Lily flanked her like shields, Ethan walking just behind. Her face was pale but resolute, her eyes carrying the weight of every sleepless night, every cruel headline, every betrayal. Across the aisle, Robert sat in his tailored suit, Vanessa at his side, smug as though the victory was already his. The judge entered, the gavel striking sharply. Court is in session. Today we deliver the ruling in Dawson v. Dawson. The silence was suffocating. Caroline's heart pounded, each beat a thunderclap in her chest. The judge began. This court has reviewed extensive evidence, medical records, witness testimony, and the character of both parties. Mr. Dawson accuses his wife of deception, instability, and infidelity, yet these claims have not been substantiated. Instead, we find repeated attempts to manipulate evidence, distort the truth, and publicly humiliate Mrs. Dawson. Robert shifted in his seat, his jaw tightening. Vanessa's smirk faltered. The judge's voice grew firmer. Records confirm Mr. Dawson's infertility, making his accusations of betrayal baseless. Evidence also shows that during a life-threatening medical crisis, he chose not to be present for his wife or child. This court cannot ignore such abandonment. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Reporters scribbled furiously. Caroline's hands trembled, tears brimming in her eyes. The judge turned to her. Mrs. Dawson, you are hereby granted full custody of your child. Mr. Dawson's request for custody is denied. Furthermore, given his conduct, this court will order a review of his fitness to retain guardianship rights at all. The gavel struck like thunder. This court stands adjourned. For a moment, Caroline couldn't breathe. The words washed over her like sunlight after a storm. Full custody. Safe. Free. Lily threw her arms around her, whispering, "You did it. You really did it." Her father's rough hands shook as he wiped away tears. "I knew you'd win, sweetheart. I knew." Ethan stood quietly, watching her with a soft smile. Caroline turned to him, her voice breaking. "Thank you for saving my life, for saving us." He shook his head gently. "You saved yourself, Caroline. I just reminded you how strong you already were." Across the aisle, Robert erupted in rage. "This isn't over. You can't take everything from me," he shouted, his voice cracking. But the reporters swarmed, their cameras flashing, their microphones recording every bitter word. Vanessa slipped from his side, her eyes darting nervously as the tide of public opinion turned. She had hitched her star to a sinking ship, and she knew it. Caroline stood, lifting her baby high, his small face peaceful against the chaos. The reporters outside cheered as she emerged from the courthouse, no longer the abandoned wife but the woman who had survived, fought, and won. She spoke into the microphones, her voice strong, steady, unforgettable. "This fight was never just about me. It was about every woman who has been silenced, shamed, or betrayed. We are not weak. We are not voiceless, and we will rise." The crowd erupted in applause, the hashtags flooding back across the internet. Stand with Caroline, Justice won, Strength and Truth. That night, Caroline tucked her baby into his crib, the city lights glowing outside her window. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to breathe without fear. She whispered to her son, her voice soft but fierce, "You will grow up loved, you will grow up safe, and you will never doubt your worth." And as Robert faced the ruins of his empire, Caroline Dawson stepped into a new chapter of her life. Stronger, freer, and no longer defined by his betrayal, but by her unbreakable strength. So that's how the story ends, my wonderful friends. You're still here with me until this very moment, aren't you? If you are, then something in Caroline's journey must have touched your heart in a way you can't quite put into words. And maybe that's the point. Stories like these remind us of truths we sometimes forget. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Caroline couldn't control her husband's betrayal, the lies, or the cruelty, but she could control her courage, her dignity, and the way she fought for her child. That's the essence of healing. Choosing how we rise when life tries to break us. Maybe you've felt abandoned. Maybe you've carried pain in silence. Remember, your past does not define you. Like Caroline, you can stand, fight, and rewrite the ending of your story. If this story reached your heart tonight, do me a small favor. Hit that like button, share this video so it can inspire someone else, and subscribe to our channel. Because together, we're not just watching stories, we're learning how to live them with strength.